What is going on, everybody? It's Roku, and we're back with some more League of Legends content. And today I've got a very nice guide for you guys. This is my how to crush solo queue tips and tricks. And in this video, I've basically prepared a presentation where I go through 10 tips that I think are the most important for a solo queue player. If you're able to apply like 3 or 4 of these tips effectively, you should be able to do far better in solo queue, right? And some of these tips are good for players of all elos. This isn't just for players for lower elos, but some of these tips are easier to apply, and if you do apply them, you'll just rush through some of these elos, right? You'll just rush through low elo and you'll get to that rank you've always wanted to get to. And even if you are a higher elo player, some of these tips are actually useful for diamond or even low master players, you know. I certainly need to work on some of these. So yeah, here I have all of my good important tips. I know that my camera is actually covering part of the screen, so I hope it's not that annoying, but I make sure everything gets out of the way. So yeah, without further ado, let's just get right into it. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe to support the channel. Let's just get right into the video, and we're gonna start off with what I think is the most important thing when it comes to solo queue. The most important tip is your mentality. How you think of the game, how you treat the game, you know. Mentality, I've made a video about mentality a while ago. I'll leave a link to it in a card. It's very old, but basically, your mentality is the most important thing about this game, right? It basically determines if you're just gonna climb at a consistent rate, or if you're just gonna be hard stuck and you're gonna hate yourself for not being able to do well in games, right? Mentality is very important. So let's just get right through and go down our list of tips. Well, it's like a sub tip, right? It's all these points kind of describe the big tip. So yeah, improving is a long process, so be patient, right? No guide video or no instructions or nothing. There's nothing in the world that you're just gonna watch, read, or learn, and you're gonna suddenly become a better player, right? That's just not how things work. Even in real life, you know, getting good at sports, getting good at school, nothing that's worth achieving in life is easy to do, right? And League is one of those things, right? Getting good at League of Legends takes hard work and it takes time. So you have to be patient with yourself, and you should probably not get frustrated when you don't get results, all right? So that's our first thing. Our second thing is to try not to flame. I know that it's very difficult to keep our toxicity under control sometimes. I myself am not a very good example of a reformed player, I guess, because I have been toxic on stream sometimes. It's just sometimes you just can't help but be frustrated in your games. But no matter what happens, try your best to calm down after you flame, right? You have to make sure that you're not stuck in chat typing to someone, right? Just focus on your own game. Don't pay attention to your teammates' chats that much. Just ignore them, right? And if you see that somebody is a chatter, meaning that they like to type more than play, then just mute them, because all they're gonna do is type and bait you into an argument and make you play worse. So don't be baited into these kinds of things. Chat is a waste of time in League of Legends. There are very little circumstances in which the chat is actually useful in solo queue. So my suggestion is, if you're a person who wants to really try hard and do nothing but improve, just mute all of chat, right? Just mute chat. That's the best you can do. But if you have to have it on, at least don't spend too much time in it, all right? It's worse for you, and you're not gonna have a too great of a time typing instead of playing the game. Because think about it, if you're thinking about the chat, you're not thinking about the game. And we don't care about the chat, we care about the game. So think about the game. Try to be mentally ready to play. What do I mean by this, right? League of Legends is a very stressful game, right? You can play Earth with your friends and etc., and that's fun and all, but solo queue is very stressful and sometimes just depressing, right? You have to make sure that you're in a mood where you can take on the stress. There are a lot of mentally unstable people, or people who've just had bad days in solo queue. One bad thing happens and their mentality just crumbles. They just stop playing properly and they just get tilted, right? This is not what you want. You have to make sure that you're calm before the game, right? That you're in a nice mental state to actually take on the stress. And you have to make sure that, like, sometimes when you're having a bad day, right, it's not the best idea to play League of Legends. Because trust me when I tell you this, if you're having a bad day, League of Legends is just going to make it worse. League of Legends solo queue. And also, this is a side point, make sure that you're healthy in real life. Because if you are not taking care of your body, and I know I'm not the person to be talking about this, I'm just starting to try to be healthy, right? This is something that I've newly stepped up on. But if you're healthier as a person, then you're going to do better in the game, right? Next, start to think for yourself. Think for yourself, make your own decisions, right? Let's be real here. Most of the people you're playing with are going to be like very stupid, or they won't know the game very well, right? It's your job to get better than them, right? They're stuck there. They're just playing their games. You are supposed to be better than them. So yeah, you might as well just not listen to them and just improve the game on your pace, right? So try to think for yourself, right? And honestly, if you're a person who's developing to be you're not a high elo player yet, but it's on your path to be a high elo player, then making it a habit to think for yourself is going to be very beneficial for you in the long run, right? Just make sure that you're not disrespectful in that. Think for yourself, but if there's a person who's clearly higher elo, don't think that what you think is better than what they know, right? Respect higher players, but for the most part, when you're dealing with people in your elo, think for yourself. The number one biggest thing for lower elo players is this. You have to accept that you are bad at this game, right? Like, that's just it, man. If you, what I'm going to say is for the people who blame their team and blame things in the game for why their heart's stuck. Bro, if you were right about things, you would not be low elo, right? Let's just make that clear, right? You are bad at this game. And everybody has to accept this, right? Because if you know that you are bad, and you know that the truth of how bad you are, you can start actually improving, right? If you don't think you're better than you actually are, you can work on yourself instead of working on who you think you are, right? We have to work with the reality of the situation. And trust me, having an ego is going to make you heart stuck 10 out of 10 times. And honestly, having an ego cripples the development of a player at any level. Trust me, every single time I got to a new rank, I had an ego, and for as long as I had that ego, I was hard stuck at that rank, right? Don't have an ego. Try to give up all pride you have and start building yourself up again. Because it's way better to be humble and graceful than to be a toxic asshole. Let's just be real here. Never surrender. Now, we do like to FF games a lot when things are lost, and honestly, it is a requirement at some points, but honestly, if you're diamond and below, surrendering games is almost never worth it, because a lot of games are throwable, right? Until the enemy has Baron, right, you can still win the game, right? And a lot of the times in lower elos, when teams get fed and they get ahead, they start to make really stupid plays and give you so many opportunities to just wipe them all out in a single team fight. You know, comebacks are a thing, especially the lower you go, so do not surrender. And this last point is something that I already covered, but don't make excuses, man. Let's be real here. No excuse is the reason as to why you are at the rank you are, man, right? You're not climbing because of reason A, B, or C. You're not climbing because you are not good enough, right? It's not Riot, it's not Smurfs, it's not your team, it's not OP champs or OP items. It's you, man. You are the common factor in all these games. So to win more, you have to change yourself. So yeah, that's the most important tip. I'll try to be a bit faster with the rest of the tips, but yeah, this is the number one tip, because if you have the mentality part down and you have a proper mental to improve at League of Legends, then you're going to be unstoppable. So yeah, just have proper mental. Our next tip. Make sure that you understand the basics. This is for some of the newer players, so some of the more advanced players won't probably understand this. But basically, if you're very new to the game, try to understand all of the concepts in the game, right? League of Legends is a very tricky game to get into when you're initially starting out. So, it's such an irregular game, because of how complex it is. So in order to properly improve at the game, you have to make sure that you understand all of the basic things in the game, right? The basic mechanics, the basic rules. What's AD, what's AP, what's true damage, Omnivamp versus lifesteal, what do turrets do, how to beat turrets, what are all these passive effects, what do champions do, what does Baron give you when you kill it, red buff, blue buff, jungle camps, which ones are stronger than the others, how do you beat some of these jungle camps, how do you beat the other ones, minions, what happens when you CS. There's so many things to this game that are very, very complicated that you have to learn. And the fast way that I've kind of devised to learn about these, that I haven't invented this, but I've just thought about it, but basically, have some sort of notepad thing, right? Let's say you play 3 or 4 League games a day, right? Have a notepad file, and this notepad, write down the things that happened in your games that you did not understand. Let's say you fought against an Akali, right? You don't know what Akali did, so write that in your notepad. And at the end of your session, you'll have 5 or 6 things that you don't know. So then go into Google or YouTube and just look at the wiki or just Google these things and find out what they are and what they do specifically, right? This way, you will speed up how fast you learn your basics. And the one big tip I can give you is to play with friends who already play League of Legends. Friends make things a lot easier, especially when it comes to a game like League. So make sure that you're playing with your friends and they're kind of holding your hand. Because honestly, learning League alone can be quite devastating. And I also learned it with my friends, and that made it very easy for me to get the basics down. Tip number 3, limit your champion pool. This is like the one tip that almost every single one of these Soloque guides gives. And it's honestly like a very simple yet effective tip. Limit your champion pool. Because League of Legends, learning League of Legends is not learning your champion, right? I know that doesn't make sense because the champion is a League of Legends champion, but it's just how it is, right? At any given point in time, you can either learn your champ or you can learn the game. And what sets people's ranks isn't how much they know their champ, it's how much they know the game, right? It's this that counts, the game, not the champ, the game. So if you play a low number of champions, especially when you're a newer player, then you're going to get comfortable on these champions, right? You're going to get really good at these champions, or you're going to know what everything that these champions do, right? And once you know that, you don't need to learn the champion anymore. You can just focus on the game. You have to spend less time figuring out what abilities do, figuring out what combos do, and you can spend more time paying attention to the game mechanics and the fundamentals in the game, right? So keep your champion pool small. One tricking is the fastest way to climb, but if you are a one trick, you will eventually reach an elo where the fact that you're a one trick is going to be such a painful experience, right? So for the healthiest player growth, I suggest that you main one role and 2 to 3 champions, right? This is your champion pool and only one role, right? Focus on these, learn these champions, get comfortable on them, and focus on the game. Speaking of which, the fundamentals are key. Now, I have to make a differentiation between the basics that I discussed before and the fundamentals. The basics are just like a noob learning how to play the game, but the fundamentals are a group of skills that every single League player needs to know and needs to be good at in order to perform in solo queue, right? Fundamentals are vital, and there's no possible way to learn the game without starting from the bottom. So, like, these fundamentals are things like CSing, trading, macro, awareness, how aware are you of the map, how much you know about junglers and etc., how much you know about trading, can your champion take these kinds of trades, if the enemy make a certain type of mistake, can you take advantage of this, team composition, how champions work, how champions, work together with each other, and lastly, mechanics, right? The mechanics that we love a lot, right? These are only some of these fundamentals, right? There are a lot more, but this is just basically a place where you can start, right? And these are all the things that matter, right? The fundamentals are all the things that matter. Like, don't get caught up on irrelevant things, right? A lot of low elo players like to sit down and focus and think about things that do not matter at all, right? It's like, oh, what build should I go with this game? What did I do here? What did I do here? Even though that does not really matter as much as what they're doing inside the game, right? So try not to get caught up on things that don't matter. Builds do matter, of course. That was just an example, but it's just an example of things that low-elo players do where like, oh, if I build A, B, and C, I'm gonna do 1,000 damage, I'll have 700 armor, and they list all these stats and think it's good. But in the game, that's just not gonna work because theory crafting and practical knowledge of the game are not the same, right? And theory crafting is essentially worthless for the most part for solo queue. Tip number 5, stop dying. Now this is a tip for my top laner bros, for my Darius guys. So here it is. If you're already a person who wins lane, gets kills, but can't win games, the number 1 tip I can give you is to stop dying, because dying is seriously the biggest way you can throw your leads away, right? You know these kinds of situations, right? You're side laning for no reason, the enemy sends like everyone at you and they finally put you down. You're mispositioning in team fights, so you get caught on one shot while your team's like way back dealing with an assassin or something. You don't build tanky enough, so you get one shot, etc, 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 right? It's almost never worth it to die, especially when you play carry champions. This is a very Darius specific tip, because Darius is very reliant on being ahead to do well, right? If a Darius has a level lead and a gold lead, then he's gonna crush a game and 1v9 it. But the second you die, you just give away your XP lead. And that is devastating if you're trying to carry the game. So try not to die, right? In some circumstances, it is okay to die. The only other circumstance I can think of is you die, but your team aces the enemy team, right? You hard win the team fight. If it's like 4 people from your team died, no, 3 people from your team died, but 5 people from the enemy team died, this is not winning hard. This is just winning a team fight. But it's like, you died, but everybody else on the enemy team died, then that's worth it, right? Obviously, it's your judgment at the end of the day. Different games have different circumstances, but dying is so bad. If you play champions like tanky champions, or like tank champions, or support champions, it's obviously okay to die, but make sure that your death is actually worth it, right? Don't just waste your life for no reason, because you're giving the enemy XP, you're giving the enemy gold, and for the entire time you are dead, you are not collecting gold and XP, which basically means that all this time, all these things are being given to the enemy team. Just understand how bad deaths are in solo queue. Tip number 6. Training and playing the game together is far better than just sitting down and playing the game a lot, right? I mentioned this before, but training and studying and hard work is the key to accomplishing anything, including League. If you sit down and play 10 games in a row, right, that's not bad because you're getting a ton of experience, a ton of example matches to look at, etc, etc, etc. But if you don't sit down and study those games, then all that time, like most of it is just wasted. Because when you just keep playing and playing and playing, the only skill you're improving is your mechanics. Think about how many fundamentals that I mentioned a few slides ago. Of all those things, you're just improving mechanics, when there's like 10 or so skills that you have to improve. So like, though mechanics are okay, mechanics have a limit, right? It's all these things they have to focus on. And you're not going to get better at them without training, right? So how you manage it is up to you, obviously, but what I suggest is to split your league time into two sessions, right? A gameplay session at the beginning, and a small period of 30 minutes or so at the end, where you actually look at your games and improve at the game. This is like your training period, your study time. Then you might be asking, hey Roku, how do I train at League of Legends? I'm glad you asked, voice in my head. Number 7, how to train and study the game. I call it training because it sounds cooler, but honestly, it's just how to study the game, right? Like I mentioned before, split your game time into game time and then training time. Play your games, and then at the end of your session, take some time for analysis, right? If you're new to the game, and you want to absorb knowledge as fast as possible, use the trick that I mentioned before. Get the things that you don't know, Google them, research them, and learn about them, like on the wiki or something. For things like jungle paths, you can go into the practice tool, try a few clears. For CSing, you can go into practice tool and try to get perfect CS for 5 to 10 minutes. For laning safe in lane, you can try to put yourself in lane against like an intermediate Morgana bot and try to CS without taking any damage. If you want to reduce your mistakes, go look at your VODs and try to see the mistakes that you made, right? Let's say you make mistakes a lot and you die to the jungler a lot. Find out why you're dying to the jungler. Are you overextending? Do you take bad trades and stay under your turret? Do you not respect the enemy jungler of how fast they can path? Is there just a lot of types of mistakes? And you have to identify the types of mistakes and reduce them one by one by one, right? Was it obvious that the jungler was there, right? Did you not expect that your enemy laner would level up and then kill you suddenly? Were you just positioning badly and got CC'd and one-shot by the enemy team? Or, like, did you just not respect someone's damage and they just one-shot you, right? Try to identify the different types of mistakes and try to address them one by one. Lastly, you can try to watch the games of higher elo players and see how they treat some of the fundamentals of the game, right? Now, here is where it gets tricky, because as a lower elo player, you're probably not going to understand too many of the mistakes that you're making, right? I've made a few coaching videos that you guys can use, obviously, and they're very good, but like sometimes you kind of need someone better to come take a look at your games. So in those spaces, like the fastest way is to obviously get someone who's already good at the game to come coach you. But if you're just trying to grind for yourself, like I got to where I got by just working on myself, by myself, then just try to just watch your own games and see what kind of mistakes you make and improve on them specifically, right? Tip number 8. If in doubt, mimic higher elo players. If you're in situations where you don't know what to do and you don't know how to play, try your best to mimic higher elo players, right? Now, I'm going to try to give you tips on how to learn things from higher elo players, because all higher elo players, some of them are psychos. So you have to know how to absorb the right information from the wrong information. If you actually go into like the u.gg of Darius and Challenger, sometimes you'll see that the right build is Duskblade, right? The 6th item Darius builds, or like the mythic that Darius wins with sometimes, is Duskblade. And sometimes like some of them by Zhonya's, right? And that's not a good build. That's just them trolling, right? Some players just troll and build things for fun a lot. You have to try to learn to understand that sometimes players do things just for the sake of doing them and not because they're optimal, right? A lot of higher elo players do this when a game is already won or lost. It doesn't really matter what you build or do. It just matters like the game's already finished, right? So try to understand the difference between a troll build and a proper optimal build, or something that a pro player did or like a higher elo player did just for fun versus something they do that's actually good and actually like, you know, good, like optimal for the game basically, right? Try to understand why people do things, right? So like there are so many like variables in League of Legends with the champion types, drakes, you know, how different players are going to play, different team compositions, etc, etc, etc. There's a ton of like random variables in League of Legends. So there's like countless variations of games that can be played. Why do I mention this? Because of this, no single build, room page, tactic, or playstyle is going to be good for every single game, right? There's no one thing you can do that's going to work every single game. League of Legends is a very dynamic game with lots of things changing, and lots of times we have to make decisions in the middle of the game that impact your whole playstyle, right? So, like, try to understand that just seeing a build and copying it is not enough, right? Though I did say mimic higher elo players, what's better than mimicking them is to learn from them, right? Why did they do this? When I skip Sterax and put it to my 3rd item and just go a 2nd tank item, don't just think that that's the way to go. Think, okay, so Roku lost lane here. and there was no way he's going to do damage for his team, so he went a tank item so that he could, do more utility, and then he got a triple kill in a random team fight because of his team, and then he could actually afford to build Serax, so then he went Serax, right? Try to understand the nuances of builds and tactics in higher elos. Don't see the what and do it, understand the why, and just insert it into your mind. Because if you learn how and why things are done, then you're going to be able to do them by yourself. You're going to be able to take the decisions and make the decisions by yourself. And if you can make your own decisions, you're already a better player, right? Try to think for yourself, because nobody knows what game you are in, right? Only you, because you're actually playing it. So the best person who can make these decisions for your games is you. So learn to make decisions and base those decisions off of why higher elo players do certain things. So learn how to absorb good information. When you watch instructional videos, and this is a tip that I want all of my viewers to have, but when you actually watch my guides and etc., when you watch instructional videos on the internet, or when you read instructional things, try to listen to the advice and take it, rather than just ignoring it and watching it for no reason, right? A lot of people watch videos in one ear, out the other ear, and it does nothing, right? I don't want that. You should sit down and listen to exactly what I'm saying and keep it in your head and think about it. Because then you're going to improve and you're going to crush those ranked games, dude. You have to actually absorb the useful content. And lastly, I mentioned this before, but don't waste your valuable time and brain energy thinking about things that don't matter, right? There's a lot of things in this game that don't matter, right? Try not to think of anything except the fundamentals, right? Only think about what's important. Tip number 9, a very, very useful tip, especially for players who are higher than gold, platinum, and especially diamond players. Tip number 9, think more. Never autopilot and focus. Autopiloting is when you stop consciously thinking about the game, you're no longer focused on the game, and you're just thinking about something else, right? Your mind is out of the game, and you're just playing without thinking, right? That's autopilot. One big cause of autopilot is tilt. So when you are on tilt, stop playing until you're off tilt again, right? Calm down, forget about it, and then you can play. While you are tilted, one mistake of the game is going to cause you to autopilot, and autopilot is just a very, very easy way to lose the game. A lot of champions, including Darius and a lot of these top laners like Bruisers, Jackson, etc., have playstyles that make you want to autopilot, right? So you have to prevent yourself from falling into the trap of autopiloting, right? So you have to just think at all points in the game. Focus on the game, look at the game, absorb the information, right? It might be mentally taxing, but that's how League of Legends is at the higher level, so you better get used to it, right? Make sure that you're focused on the game at all times, Stop with these distractions, stop going on your phone, turn off the video on your second screen, just, think about the game, because fundamentally, League of Legends is a race of who can think the most. If you think more than your enemy team, right? If you know about more things than the enemy, if you think about team fights, if you think about cooldowns, if you think about things like, oh, I know that Riven can't beat me if I have this much HP, etc., 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 then you're gonna beat the enemy because you know more than them. You can do more than them because you know the game better than them, right? And sometimes you can beat better players if you just think more, right? If you're focused and you're applying everything you know, you're going to beat a player who's significantly better than you, who is not focusing on the game, right? Focus is a very, very powerful tool, and you have to use it in League of Legends properly. There's so much stuff in League of Legends to think about, and macro plays into this massively, right? Cooldowns, wave management, how you should hit the minions to make them move a certain way, how many minions to reach level 2, how the jungler's path, how you should approach team fights, should you flank, should you go front to back, should you try to wait for the fight to start first and then run in, how do you split push, do you watch out for the enemies to come to you and then run away, or do you actually take those fights, take those 1v2s and try to open up the map by yourself, or do you just bait the team into coming to you, tell your team to engage, and go flank and win this easy team fight that you've created, right? So there are so many things in this game to think about that I can make an entire new video on this topic, but make sure that you're thinking all the time. Everything in this game requires thinking except mechanics. And it's not mechanics that sets two players apart. It's like their mind for the game, right? Mechanics obviously help, right? Mechanics obviously are like, if there are two challenger players, mechanics might be the main difference between these two challenger players. But the biggest difference between a challenger player and a platinum player is not mechanics, it's macro. It's all the other things, right? So for 99% of you guys, mechanics is not going to matter that much, right? And honestly, if you're already not a high level player, then mechanics is like not even going to matter, right? If you're Grandmaster and Challenger or High Master, then you have to have perfect mechanics. But if you're not, then you can carry yourself purely through outthinking your opponent. So make sure that your mind is sharp. Think about some of these things before the game starts, right? Basically, you need to have a light sketch of your game plan in Champ Select. Let's think about it, right? Let's say you're in a bad matchup. Are you going to shove the lane, or are you going to play safe, right? Let's say you're in a matchup that's hard for you to win, but your team comp is better. So if you just survive laning phase, you can just crush the enemy team together with your team. In that case, it might be better to just, like, if you're up against, let's say, Ignite Fiora, it might be really good if you win lane, but Ignite Fiora has a very high chance of killing you. So maybe it's a great idea to just hold back, play a bit safer, wait for team fights, and that's your win condition. Just playing with your team, because you're a much better team fighter than Fiora, right? Let's say you're playing Darius, for example. So try to understand your win condition, try to understand how your team works, try to understand the optimal things, and try to play for them. Have your game plan before the game even starts. And doing that is going to give you an extra boost that your enemy players might not have. The last tip I'm going to give is dodging. Don't be afraid to dodge. I got a bunch of like negative comments and like messages about the dodging guide I made, because dodging is a very cheap tactic, and I agree. But to be honest, with the state of Soloque right now, dodging is necessary, right? Like, if you, like, there's so many conditions that can ruin a game that Riot either can't fix or won't fix, that dodging is our only defense. And there's not a single high elo player in the world who does not dodge, like, regularly. So if you're about to, like, come up to me and tell me, hey, you're a toxic player for, like, you know, promoting dodging, you are delusional, because that's how people do it. People have to dodge at high elo, and I'm here to give you guys the best tips, right? So yes, once Riot fixes Soloque and we live in a utopia, you know, maybe don't dodge and it's toxic. But unfortunately, we have to dodge some of these games. So yeah, learn how to dodge. Dodging is when you close the client in Champ Select in order for you to not progress into the game, right? So when you dodge, you lose LP, but you don't lose MMR. And MMR is what matters, right? When you dodge for the first time in a day, you lose 3 LP and you get a 6-minute timer. But every subsequent dodge is going to lose you 10 LP and is going to give you a 30-minute timer, unless you play a game after a dodge. Then the game that you dodge after you play a game is going to lose you 10 LP still, but you only get a 6-minute timer, right? Now, as I said, dodging is our only defense versus games that are already lost in Champion Select. You can dodge when you don't get your one trick, when you don't have the champions that you play. Let's say they're all banned or the enemy picks all of them. Just dodge the game instead of picking something that you've never played before. You're not some, like, you don't have plot armor, man. You're not like the main character of some like you know, comic book or an anime. You're not gonna win games that like with champions that you've never like played before, right? So don't like do things that are stupid. Take the dodge sometimes, right? If your one trick is banned and you don't have any champions left that you can play properly, just dodge the game. If your team composition is horrible and the enemy team's champions are just better at every single thing, then it might be a good idea to dodge. Or let's say you play Darius and the enemy team composition just counters you extremely hard, then maybe it's a good idea to dodge the game. If you have a troll or a griefer who's just holding the champ select hostage, or is just so mentally ill that you can't bother going into a game with this guy, then dodge the game. You don't want to get into a game with that guy. Like, don't be afraid to dodge, man. Like I said, it's minus LP, not MMR. MMR matters, LP does not. LP is just for show, right? Now, I'm going to link a card on the top right there, I guess. Right there, I think. I'm not sure. And that is my League of Legends dodging guide. And that guide is going to have every single thing you need to about dodging, like, in full detail. So go check that video out if you want to know more about dodging. But yeah, that is pretty much it for this video. I am almost done with my exams, guys, so I'm going to be able to stream again and make more YouTube videos. So be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and stay tuned for all these amazing guides. I know that a lot of you are not subscribed yet, so be sure to subscribe. So yeah, I won't keep you guys for much longer. Thank you very much for watching the video up till this far, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace out.